Hi, I'm Gail and welcome to Culture Crew with the one and only Jerry Grinstein.
Gail taught me everything I know about the airline industry. Well, the biggest challenge, of course, was that it was running out of money. And, I wasn't even sure we were going to make payroll. We were running out of money, and we did one last financing. It was a desperation. United, which was serving Hawaii as a competitor, our only competitor, really, had a strike, and they were off for 3 months. And we minted money. We hit that price and held it, so it all converted into equity, so we didn't have the interest to pay. Wow. So it became attractive. And at about that same time, Delta had a romance with another company on the West Coast. They were talking about buying another airline on the West Coast. That never came about, but it was an indication that they wanted to come to the West Coast. And Delta was really the strongest West Coast carrier available. But what really happened was they heard that American or TWA was going to try to buy Western. And so they jumped in to buy it. American would never have been a good romance. It's a different culture, a different environment. It would not have been a fit. They were building, they had a strong operation in Los Angeles, and they wanted to flow that through DFW and then to the east. And so they really didn't need us, but Delta was always the better choice because they didn't have a West Coast operation. First place, you saved all the jobs. I mean, the first goal of a selling company is to save all the jobs. Yeah. And so that would fit with Delta, would not fit with American because they were so big in LA. But it was a perfect fit. It would be hard to have found a better fit. Even if the road getting there was a little bumpy. Yeah. In the geography, the job retention, and the cultural similarity. After retaining the jobs, it was the cultural similarity. They were very much alike. A high level of service, a strong support all the way through. People liked their jobs. Yeah. They wanted to work there, and they liked the business. And that was the same feeling that you had at Western. It was not as stressed as it was not an unhappy company. Yeah. And that made all the difference in the world. You define it as a happy company. It doesn't mean it didn't have its stresses and its issues. It had them. But basically people liked the company. They liked being with the company. They wanted it to survive. Yeah. And they were delighted when Delta bought it. I mean, it was a perfect fit for them, just emotionally, intellectually, in every level. It was the way they wanted to go. Well, of course, geography, right? And that was not unimportant. And they had champagne service, steaks, and they'd put in dry ice and smokers flowing through the cabin. A high level of service. And in the markets that Delta was serving, that kind of service would have appeal. They had champagne service if you're going to Hawaii or Mexico City or big city. But even on flights where you didn't have that kind of service, they would have a lottery and people would win bottles of champagne. It was crappy champagne. Each seat is not a lump of coal. It's a service difference. And Delta, above all else right now, gets it more than it's leading the whole industry. Yeah. Premium service is expanding. and the customers are happier and willing to pay for it and notice the difference. That's what smart executives are supposed to be doing. You're doing something extraordinary and different and better, and that's a motivator. That gives you the will to do the best job you possibly can for all of your colleagues. It was that style, that lighter touch that they had. Every once in a while, Cary Grant would come down and visit the building. It was just the way the company was. Western had a great reputation in California. They were well regarded, and that transferred to Delta. Taking advantage of the Los Angeles location, using movie stars and other things as part of your advertising, and also being a bit of a wise ass. I mean, it was, you have to make it fun. People have to enjoy it. Well, surviving, I mean, just not having to file for Chapter 11 or disappear was a big deal. Salt Lake City working as a hub was a big part of it. We were a lot less desirable if we didn't have something in the Midwest. And I think the third thing is that we liked each other. I mean, we were comfortable with each other, and so you didn't dread going to work. I looked forward to it. Of course, the day we converted all of that debt into equity, you knew that the world was going to turn out okay after that. We persuaded Salt Lake City to make a huge investment in an airport. So the first time that the Concourse D was open, and I walked through and it was full of passengers, I think I threw my arms up and said, "Oh shit, this is living." So those were two of them, and of course the third was when we made the deal with Delta. That Delta was a turning point because it was exactly what the industry needed, what the companies needed, and what the people in the companies needed, and a fit without threat. Western was a terrific group of people. Now, Western was really a great experience, a great journey together, and full of really lovely people who worked the field, but it needed the solidity and the growth, the scale, and the culture, and the background of Delta to make a go of it. And once you put those two together and add to it where you have to go, which is you got to have more style. I mean, you've got to have a personality. You've got to be defined differently from anybody else. And Western was defined differently from the other carriers. And Delta is today. And I think Western's an integral part of the revival of Delta, from a company dropped off the list of exceptional companies to back on it. When I arrived at Delta, not as a board member, but as CEO, everyone said, we've got to fix the culture. And I thought about it and thought, there's nothing wrong with this culture. It's the best culture in the industry. I mean, how bad can it be? So the problem was restoring it.
Exactly.
Peters and Waterman wrote that book, In Search of Excellence. Delta was one of the 16 companies, and then of those, none are left. Only Delta has come back. You can't really treat yourself as special. You you can't have a special parking place. You can't have, you're one of the people, right?
You see
paper on the ground, you pick it up.
Yep.
Park your car in the same lot with everybody else.
We've cleaned labs, we've cleaned airplanes, we've cleaned, like there's nothing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I had Larry Lee for a while as a mentor, and that made a big difference because I was totally inexperienced at that.
What do you think he taught you the most?
To be calm. There are moments in any company where you have to be calm. And I mean, when US Air decided they wanted to acquire Delta, right?
Oh, yeah.
I had a vision of 60,000 people in a state of panic, right?
Yeah.
And so I did a video or something, and I said, look, they win today. We win all the rest of the days. Don't get too excited about this.
Yeah.
Airlines began creating low-cost subsidiaries. You may not remember, but United created TED, right? And they were trying to fly in the West. And American was doing the Eagle, and Delta.
We started with Delta Express.
Never should have done Song.
Express. Well, we did Delta Express before Song even.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you know, that's, you know, in life there are choices you have to make. And there's some things you're going to do well and some things you're going to screw up. You couldn't run a high-end airline. You could not run the Delta of today as a song with, or have a low-cost carrier. You do one thing and you do it well, and you really do it well. And that seems to me to be the message I take out of it. That's exactly what Western was always trying to do with that damn dry ice and the overcooked steaks and the champagne.
Yeah, but it worked.
Yeah, it worked. It was a flair.
Yeah.
It was a style, and it worked. But it doesn't. It probably means that you're not going to do a low-cost airline as well, and that's what that's one of the takeaways. In-flight entertainment. Did we want to put them in the back of the seats or not? And the argument was, look, you don't want the weight of the equipment, and you don't want the cost of all of that equipment, and you want to be able to have the cheapest seat. And then the other side of that is you can make a seat so cheap, you know, nobody, it's like a pizza, nobody will eat it.
Yeah.
We finally made the right decision. And strange things happened that we never anticipated. For example, you used to have a whole flock of flight attendants on long stage length flights. But with in-flight entertainment, they're not just asking for drinks and food and everything else. They're watching what's in front of them, right? So they don't need as much service. And so it changed the dynamic all the way around. It was perfect we never even anticipated that. People that work in the companies are entitled to a sense that whoever is running the company is fully loyal to their interest and to the company, and not trying to use it as a device to make an awful lot of dough or establish not just a personal fortune, but a name for himself or herself. And if you don't get that, then it's every person for themselves, and so that causes things to splinter. And that, strangely enough, didn't happen at Western. I mean, it went through this enormous period when there was a sense of instability, but people's loyalty to the company was very strong. It never varied.
Okay, I have to ask you a very important question.
Yeah.
We carpooled together.
Right.
Right? I drove our first day, I picked you up, honk, honk, right? And we're driving along the expressway, and you say to me, I can't tell if you're trying to move over or not. Are you trying to move over? And I don't know if you remember this, but I said, Jerry, there's only one of us driving this car right now, and it happens to be me. But if you want me to pull over, I will, and you can drive my car. I want a grade for my driving.
Well, since we both survived, it's an A.
Okay,
right?
Excellent.